The dining room chandelier flickered, casting jagged shadows across the mahogany table where Margaret's voice sliced through the air like a knife. "You're not good enough for my son, Clara," she spat, her manicured nails tapping rhythmically, each word a calculated jab. I sat frozen, my fork hovering over the untouched roast, as her venomous gaze pinned me to the chair. This wasn't the first time Margaret had attacked me. Since the day I married her son, Ethan, 3 years ago, she'd made it her mission to remind me I was beneath her. Too poor, too unrefined, too ordinary for her golden boy, the heir to her imagined dynasty. But tonight, something in me snapped. Maybe it was the way her lips curled when she mentioned my second-hand dress, or how she sneered at the modest ring Ethan had chosen for me, a ring I cherished more than any diamond she flaunted. I set my fork down, my hands trembling not with fear, but with a fire I'd suppressed for too long. "Margaret," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You don't know me at all." Her eyes narrowed, but I held her gaze, feeling Ethan's anxious presence beside me. He reached for my hand under the table, his touch grounding me. Margaret laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, I know enough. Clara, you're a charity case. Ethan deserves better than a woman who can barely afford her own shoes." The room fell silent. Ethan's grip tightened, but he didn't speak. He never did when his mother unleashed her tirades. I didn't blame him, not entirely. Margaret had a way of dominating every space. Her wealth and status a shield she wielded with precision. She'd raised Ethan in her sprawling colonial house, the same house we all lived in now, a place she treated as her kingdom. She thought I was a guest in her domain, a temporary inconvenience she could bully into submission. She was wrong. I grew up in a small apartment above a laundromat. The hum of washing machines my lullaby. My parents worked double shifts to keep food on the table. And I learned early that pride wasn't in what you owned, but in what you built. By 30, I'd clawed my way up, starting with a single propertia rundown duplex I'd bought at auction with every cent I'd saved. I renovated it myself, learning plumbing and drywall on YouTube, turning it into a rental that paid for itself. That was just the beginning. Over the years, I'd quietly amassed a small real estate empire, each deal smarter than the last. I never told Ethan, not because I didn't trust him, but because I wanted to be loved for me, not my bank account. Margaret, with her designer handbags and inherited wealth, had no idea who she was dealing with. That night, as her words hung in the air, I made a decision. I was done playing small. "Margaret," I said, leaning forward, "let's talk about this house." Her eyebrow arched, a flicker of curiosity breaking her smug facade. "What about it?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. "You've lived here your whole life, haven't you? Must be nice, having such a grand home." She preened, oblivious to the trap. "Of course. This house has been in our family for generations. It's a legacy, something you wouldn't understand." I nodded, letting her bask in her superiority. Ethan glanced at me, confusion in his eyes, but I squeezed his hand, signaling him to trust me. "A legacy," I repeated, my voice soft but edged with steel. "Funny thing about legacies, Margaret, they don't always belong to who you think." Her smile faltered. I stood, walking to the sideboard where I kept my files, and pulled out a folder. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as I slid the documents across the table. "Take a look," I said. Margaret hesitated, then opened the folder, her eyes scanning the pages. Her face paled, her fingers trembling as she read the title deed. My name was on it. Not hers. Not her late husband's. Mine. "Clara," Ethan whispered, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. Margaret's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "This is impossible," she hissed. "This house is mine. I tilted my head, my voice calm but unyielding. No, Margaret. I bought it 2 years ago when you were struggling with the taxes. The bank was going to foreclose. I paid it off, every cent, and took the deed. You've been living in my house. The silence was deafening. Margaret's mouth opened, then closed, her composure crumbling. Ethan stared at me, his eyes searching for answers I hadn't yet given him. I hated that he was caught in the crossfire, but I couldn't let Margaret's cruelty fester any longer. She'd spent years belittling me, assuming I was nothing because I didn't flaunt my wealth. Now, the truth was her undoing. You're lying, she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. I crossed my arms, feeling the weight of years of restraint lift off my shoulders. I'm not. And if you'd like, I can show you the bank records, the transfer documents, everything. Or you can keep pretending you're in control. Your choice. Margaret's face contorted, a mix of rage and humiliation. She'd built her identity on this house, on the illusion of her untouchable status. Now, that illusion was shattered, and I was the one holding the pieces. Ethan stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Clara, why didn't you tell me? His voice was soft, hurt, but not angry. I met his gaze, my heart aching. I wanted you to love me for me, Ethan, not for what I own. He nodded, processing, his hand still in mine. Margaret, meanwhile, was unraveling. You manipulative little, she started. But I cut her off. Careful, Margaret. You're a guest in my home now. I'd suggest you start acting like one. The words landed like a slap. She stood, her chair wobbling, and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously on the hardwood. Ethan and I sat in the quiet aftermath, the weight of the revelation settling between us. I knew this was just the beginning. Margaret wouldn't go down without a fight, and Ethan and I had bridges to rebuild. But for the first time, I felt free. I wasn't the poor girl she'd mocked. I was Clara, the woman who'd built her own empire, and I was done hiding. The next morning, the house felt like a battlefield after a ceasefire. Quiet, but charged with the promise of more conflict. Ethan sat at the kitchen island, his coffee untouched, his eyes fixed on the marble countertop as if it held answers I hadn't given him. I wanted to reach for him, to explain everything, but the chasm between us felt wider than ever. Margaret hadn't spoken since storming out last night. I'd heard her pacing in her wing of the house, her footsteps a restless rhythm that echoed through the walls. She was plotting. I knew it. A woman like Margaret didn't surrender. She regrouped. I poured myself a coffee, the mug warm in my hands, and sat across from Ethan. We need to talk, I said softly. He looked up, his eyes a storm of emotions: love, betrayal, confusion. Clara, you own this house. You own everything we've been living in, and you didn't tell me. Why? His voice wasn't accusatory, but the hurt in it cut deeper than any shout. I took a breath, steadying myself. I didn't want you to see me differently. I love you, Ethan. I wanted us to be equals, not someone you felt indebted to. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was wrestling with his thoughts. I don't feel indebted, Clara. I feel like I don't know you. Those words stung, but I couldn't argue. I'd kept this part of myself locked away, not just from Margaret, but from him. My silence had protected me once, but now it was a wedge. Before I could respond, the front door slammed. Margaret swept into the kitchen, her face a mask of forced composure, her designer scarf a stark contrast to the fury in her eyes. Clara, she said, her voice icy. I've spoken to my lawyer. This house is mine, and I'll prove it. You think you can waltz in here with your little papers and steal my legacy? You're mistaken. I set my mug down, meeting her gaze. Margaret, you can call every lawyer in the state. The deed is in my name, legally and indisputably. You're welcome to check the county records. Her lips pressed into a thin line, But she didn't back down. "You're a fraud," she hissed. "You tricked me, manipulated the situation. I'll drag you through court if I have to." Ethan stood, his voice sharp. "Mom, stop it." It was the first time I'd heard him challenge her directly, and it caught us both off guard. Margaret's head whipped toward him, her eyes wide. "Ethan, you can't possibly side with her. She's been lying to you. To us." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "She's my wife, Mom, and you've been cruel to her for years. If she didn't tell me about the house, maybe it's because she didn't feel safe." The words hung heavy, a truth neither of us had voiced before. Margaret's face flushed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to me, her voice low and venomous. "This isn't over. Clara, you may own this house, but you'll never belong here." With that, she spun on her heel and left, her departure a storm cloud trailing behind her. I looked at Ethan, my heart pounding. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," I said, my voice breaking. "I was afraid you'd think I was trying to buy your love." He crossed the kitchen, pulling me into his arms. "Clara, I love you. Not the house, not money, but you have to trust me. No more secrets." I nodded against his chest, tears stinging my eyes. For the first time, I felt like we were on the same side. But Margaret's threat lingered like smoke. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who'd helped me with every property deal. "Clara, the deed is airtight," she assured me over the phone. "Margaret can try to contest it, but she has no claim. The house was in foreclosure. You paid it off fair and square." I thanked her, but unease gnawed at me. Margaret wasn't the type to fight fair. Over the next few days, the house became a chessboard. Margaret avoided me, but her presence was everywhere. Whispered phone calls, pointed glares, and subtle jabs at family dinners. Ethan tried to mediate, but his loyalty was torn. He loved his mother, but he was beginning to see her for what she was, a woman clinging to a fading sense of control. I, meanwhile, was grappling with my own guilt. Had I been wrong to keep my wealth a secret? Was I punishing Ethan for his mother's sins? One evening, as I sorted through paperwork in my office, I found an old photo tucked in a filia picture of my parents outside that first duplex I'd bought. They were beaming, proud of the daughter who'd turned their sacrifices into something real. I traced their faces, remembering why I'd fought so hard. This wasn't just about Margaret or the house. It was about proving I was enough, not just for Ethan, but for myself. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I opened it to find a courier with a thick envelope. Inside was a legal notice from Margaret's lawyer, claiming I'd acquired the house through fraudulent means. My heart sank, but anger quickly followed. She was coming for me, and I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. The legal notice sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. Margaret's accusations, fraud, coercion, deceit were baseless, but the audacity of her move shook me. She wasn't just fighting for the house. She was fighting to reclaim her pride, and I was the enemy she'd chosen to destroy. I called Sarah immediately. "This is a bluff," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Margaret's lawyer is fishing, hoping to scare you into settling. We'll counter with the full paper trail, bank records, tax documents, everything." I trusted Sarah, but the thought of a legal battle drained me. This wasn't just about money or property. It was personal. Margaret wanted to humiliate me, to prove I didn't belong in her world. Ethan found me in my office. The notice crumpled in my hand. "Clara, what's this?" he asked, his voice heavy with worry. I handed it to him, watching his face darken as he read. "She's suing you," he said, incredulous. "This is insane." I nodded, my throat tight. "She thinks she can bully me into giving up the house. She's wrong." He sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee. "I'm with you, Clara. I know I've been quiet, but I see what she's doing. I see who she is. His words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the guilt I felt for dragging him into this. "Ethan," I said, "I never wanted to hurt you. I just couldn't let her keep treating me like I was nothing." He squeezed my hand. "You're not nothing. You're everything." The next morning, I met Sarah at her office, a sleek space downtown filled with legal books and the faint scent of coffee. She laid out the plan. We'd file a response, present the evidence, and request a dismissal. "Margaret's case is weak," Sarah said, "but she's banking on emotional manipulation. She'll play the victim, claim you took advantage of her financial struggles." I nodded, my jaw tight. Let her try? I've got the truth on my side. Back at the house, Margaret was in full performance mode. She'd invited her sister, Evelyn, over, and the two of them sat in the parlor, whispering loudly about my deception. I overheard Evelyn say, "She's a gold digger. Margaret always was." I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to storm in. Instead, I went to the garage, where I kept my old toolbox from my renovation days. Pulling out a hammer, I felt the weight of it in my hand, a reminder of the work I'd done to build my life. Margaret could call me whatever she wanted. I knew who I was. That evening, Ethan and I sat down to really talk. I told him everything, how I'd started with that first duplex, the sleepless nights studying real estate law, the deals I'd made behind the scenes. He listened, his eyes wide with admiration and a touch of hurt. "Clara, you're incredible," he said. "But why hide it? Did you think I wouldn't love you if I knew?" I shook my head, tears spilling over. "I was afraid you'd see me as someone else. Someone powerful. I just wanted to be your Clara." He pulled me close, his voice soft. "You are my Clara, and you're powerful. That's not a bad thing." For the first time, I felt like we were truly partners, not just in love, but in facing whatever came next. But Margaret wasn't done. The next day, she cornered me in the hallway, her eyes gleaming with malice. "I found something," she said, holding up an old letter. "Proof that this house was meant to stay in the family. You can't take that away." I took the letter, scanning it quickly. It was a handwritten note from her late husband, expressing his wish that the house remain a family legacy. It was sentimental, not legal, but I could see the trap. She was building a narrative, one that painted me as a heartless opportunist. "This changes nothing, Margaret," I said, handing it back. "The house is mine, and no letter will undo that." Her smile was cold. "We'll see what a judge thinks." The days blurred into a haze of legal prep and tense silences. Ethan tried to talk to his mother, but she shut him out, her pride too wounded to bend. I, meanwhile, was digging into my own past, pulling records of every deal I'd made, every dollar I'd earned. It was exhausting, but it reminded me of my strength. I wasn't the girl Margaret thought I was. I was a woman who'd built something from nothing, and I wasn't going to let her take it away. By the end of the week, Sarah had filed our response, and the waiting game began. Margaret's lawyer was aggressive, sending daily emails demanding mediation, but Sarah held firm. "They're stalling," she said. "They know they can't win." Still, the uncertainty gnawed at me. What if Margaret's theatrics swayed a judge? What if Ethan resented me for tearing his family apart? The house, once a symbol of my triumph, now felt like a cage. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The courthouse loomed like a storm cloud, its gray stone facade as unyielding as Margaret's resolve. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood and nervous anticipation. I sat beside Sarah, my hands clasped tightly, as Margaret's lawyer droned on about family legacy and emotional distress. It was all theater, but Margaret played her part well, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her face a portrait of wounded dignity. Sarah leaned over, whispering, "She's laying it on thick. But we've got this." I nodded, but my stomach churned. Ethan sat behind me, his presence a quiet anchor, though I could feel his tension radiating across the room. Margaret hadn't spoken to him since the lawsuit began, and the rift between them was growing. I hated that I was the wedge, but I couldn't let her lies win. When it was our turn, Sarah presented the evidence with surgical precision: the foreclosure notice, the bank transfer, the signed deed. Ms. Clara purchased the property legally, she said, her voice clear and commanding. Mrs. Margaret had no claim to the house after defaulting on the taxes. My client acted in good faith, saving the property from auction. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, nodded, her pen scratching notes. Margaret's lawyer countered with the letter from her late husband, waving it like a flag. This proves the house was meant to stay in the family, he argued. Clara exploited Mrs. Margaret's vulnerability. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but I kept my face neutral. The judge raised an eyebrow. Sentimental value isn't legal standing, she said dryly. Do you have any documentation to dispute the deed? The lawyer faltered, and I felt a spark of hope. After hours of back and forth, the judge called a recess. Outside, Ethan pulled me into a quiet corner. Clara, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice raw. I didn't realize how far she'd go. I touched his cheek, my heart aching. This isn't your fault, Ethan. She's fighting for control, not love. He nodded, but the pain in his eyes lingered. I wondered if our marriage could survive this war. Back in the courtroom, the judge delivered her ruling. The deed is valid, she said, her tone final. Mrs. Margaret has no legal claim to the property. Case dismissed. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. Margaret stood, her face a mask of fury, and stormed out, her lawyer scrambling to keep up. Ethan reached for my hand, but I could feel the weight of what came next. Winning the house was one thing. Winning peace was another. That night, Margaret packed her bags. She didn't speak to me, but her silence was louder than any insult. Ethan tried to talk to her, but she brushed him off, her pride too bruised to bend. As her car pulled away, I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache. This house, my greatest achievement, had become a battleground, and I wasn't sure what we'd lost in the fight. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I tried to rebuild. We talked late into the night, unraveling years of unspoken fears. I told him about my childhood, the sacrifices my parents made, the pride I felt in building something of my own. He shared his own struggles growing up under Margaret's iron grip, always feeling like he had to prove himself. We were raw, vulnerable, but closer than ever. Still, Margaret's absence left a void. Ethan missed her, even if he didn't say it. I suggested reaching out, but he shook his head. She needs time, he said, and so do we. I agreed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Margaret wasn't the type to disappear quietly. One evening, as I was reviewing a new property deal, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You may have won the house, but you'll never win him. My blood ran cold. It was Margaret. I was sure of it. I showed Ethan, and his face hardened. She's trying to get in your head, he said. Don't let her. But the message lingered, a seed of doubt I couldn't uproot. I threw myself into work, focusing on my next project, a community center for low-income families. It was a dream I'd had since I was a kid, a way to give back what my parents had given me. Ethan supported me, even volunteering to help with the planning. It was a reminder of why I loved him, why I'd fought so hard to build a life with him. But Margaret's shadow loomed, her words a constant whisper in my mind. By the end of the month, we'd settled into a new rhythm, but the peace felt fragile. I knew Margaret was out there, plotting her next move. And I knew, deep down, that the real battle wasn't about the house site, was about family, loyalty, and the price of truth. I was ready to fight, but I hoped it wouldn't come to that. For Ethan's sake, and for mine. The community center project became my refuge, a place where I could pour my energy into something bigger than Margaret's vendetta. The site was a rundown lot I'd bought cheap, now buzzing with contractors and volunteers. Ethan was there every weekend, hammering nails and painting walls, his laughter a reminder of the man I'd fallen for. But even in those moments of joy, Margaret's text haunted me. "You'll never win him." I tried to push it aside, but doubt crept in like damp rot. Ethan was loyal, but Margaret knew how to pull his strings. She'd raised him, shaped him, and her absence left a wound I couldn't heal. One night, as we lay in bed, I asked, "Do you miss her?" He sighed, staring at the ceiling. "I miss who I thought she was, but I don't miss the way she treated you." His words were honest, but they didn't erase the ache in my chest. A week later, Margaret resurfaced, not in person, but through Evelyn, who showed up at the house unannounced. "Clara," she said, her tone syrupy with false concern. "Margaret's struggling. She's living in a condo, barely getting by. You've taken everything from her." I bristled, but kept my voice calm. "I took nothing, Evelyn. She lost the house because she couldn't pay the taxes. I saved it." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You're cold, Clara. Ethan deserves a wife who cares about family." The jab hit hard, but I didn't flinch. Ethan's my family, and I'm done letting Margaret dictate what that means. Evelyn left, but her words lingered, a reminder of the narrative Margaret was spinning. She wasn't just fighting for the house. She was fighting for Ethan's loyalty, painting me as the villain who'd torn their family apart. I threw myself deeper into the community center, hoping work would drown out the noise. The project was taking shape classrooms for kids, a kitchen for free meals, a space for hope. Ethan was my rock, but I could see the strain in him. He was caught between his love for me and his guilt over his mother. One evening, as we painted a mural with local kids, he said, "Clara, I want to fix this. I want us to be a family again." I nodded, but my heart sank. Did family include Margaret? The answer came sooner than I expected. Margaret called Ethan, her voice tearful, begging to meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her come to the house. She arrived looking smaller, her usual elegance dulled by exhaustion. "Clara," she said, her voice trembling, "I want to make things right." I didn't trust her, but Ethan's hopeful expression stopped me from shutting her down. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd revealed the deed. Margaret clasped her hands, her eyes on Ethan. "I was wrong," she said. "I was proud, and I hurt you both. Clara, I misjudged you." Her words sounded sincere, but I'd learned to read her. This was a performance, a new strategy to regain control. Ethan, though, was softening, his hand reaching for hers. "Mom, we can move past this," he said, "but you have to accept Clara." She nodded, tears welling, but her glance at me was sharp, calculating. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was on guard. Over the next few days, Margaret was a model guest, polite, even warm. She helped with dishes, complimented my cooking, asked about the community center. Ethan was thrilled, but I saw the cracks in her facade, the way her smile never reached her eyes, the subtle digs about my humble beginnings. She was playing a long game, and I wasn't sure Ethan saw it. One night, as I reviewed blueprints for the center, I found an email from an anonymous sender. It contained photos Ethan and Margaret at a coffee shop, laughing, looking like the family they'd once been. The caption read, "He'll always choose her." My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was Margaret's doing, a mind game to break me. I showed Ethan, and his face fell. "Clara, I met her to talk. That's all. I'd never choose her over you." I believed him, but the seed of doubt grew. The community center's grand opening was a week away, and I poured everything into it. The kids painted murals. The volunteers hung lights. And Ethan was there, his support unwavering. But Margaret's presence lingered, a shadow over our progress. I knew she was waiting for a misstep, a chance to reclaim her place in Ethan's life. I wasn't going to give her one. As the opening approached, I made a decision. I'd confront Margaret, not with anger, but with truth. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about family, and I was done letting her define it. The stage was set, and I was ready for the final act. The community center's grand opening was a burst of light in a month of shadows. Families filled the courtyard. Kids ran through the new playground, and the air hummed with laughter and hope. I stood at the podium, my heart full as I looked out at the CrowdMe community. My dream made real. Ethan was by my side, his hand in mine, his pride in me a quiet strength. But Margaret was there too, in the back, her smile polished but brittle. I'd invited her, against my instincts, because Ethan believed she was changing. I wanted to believe it too, for his sake. But the anonymous email and her calculated warmth told a different story. As I gave my speech, thanking the volunteers and sharing my vision for the center, I felt her eyes on me, not applauding, just watching. It was a reminder that this wasn't over. After the ceremony, as people mingled, Margaret approached. "Clara, this is impressive," she said, her tone careful. "You've done well." I nodded, wary. "Thank you, Margaret. It's for the community, not me." She smiled, but it was the smile of a predator circling prey. "Of course. But you must feel so powerful, don't you? All this. And my son's heart too." Her words were a jab, cloaked in civility. But I didn't bite. "I don't need power, Margaret. I need family." She flinched, just slightly, but enough for me to see I'd hit a nerve. Ethan joined us, his arm around my waist. "Mom, isn't this great?" he said, his voice bright but strained. Margaret's smile tightened. "Wonderful, Ethan. I'm so proud of Clara." The lie was smooth, but I saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't here to celebrate. She was here to reclaim. That night, back at the house, I confronted her. Ethan was out, picking up supplies for the center, and it was just the two of us in the kitchen. "Margaret," I said, my voice steady, "I know about the email. I know you're trying to drive a wedge between me and Ethan." Her face didn't change, but her hands tightened around her teacup. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Don't," I cut in. "You've been playing nice. But I see you. You think you can manipulate Ethan, make him choose you over me. But he's not a prize to be won. He's my husband, and we're building a life together." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't speak. I leaned closer. "You can be part of that life, but only if you stop this. No more games. No more lies." For a moment, she was silent, her face a mask. Then she laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You think you've won, Clara. You may have this house, this center, but Ethan's my son. He'll always come back to me." Her words were a blade, but I didn't flinch. "He loves you, Margaret. But he loves me too. And I'm not going anywhere." She stood, her chair scraping, and left without a word. I sat there, my heart racing, knowing I'd drawn a line. When Ethan returned, I told him everything. His face darkened, but he didn't doubt me. "I'll talk to her," he said. "This stops now." I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. What if she was right? What if Ethan's loyalty to her ran deeper than I knew? The next day, Margaret was gone. No note, no goodbye, just an empty guest room and a lingering sense of unease. Ethan was quiet, his grief palpable, but he didn't chase her. "She needs to figure this out," he said, his voice heavy. "And we need to move forward." I agreed, but the victory felt hollow. I'd wanted to prove myself, not destroy a family. The community center thrived, becoming a beacon for the neighborhood. Ethan and I grew closer, our bond forged in the fire of this fight. But Margaret's absence was a shadow, a reminder of the cost of truth. I kept waiting for her next move. But weeks passed with no word. Maybe she'd finally let go. Maybe. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Ethan took my hand. "Clara, I'm proud of you," he said. "Not just for the center, but for standing up to her. For us." Tears stung my eyes, but they were tears of relief. We were a team, stronger than ever. But deep down, I knew Margaret wasn't done. She'd retreated, but women like her always came back. And when she did, I'd be ready. Months passed, and the house felt lighter without Margaret's shadow. The community center was thriving, filled with kids' laughter and families finding hope. Ethan and I were rebuilding, our love stronger for the scars it bore. But I never stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for Margaret's next move. Women like her didn't vanish, they regrouped. It came on a quiet Sunday. A letter slipped under the door. No return address, just Margaret's elegant script. "Ethan, Clara," it read. "I've been wrong, and I'm sorry. I want to come home." My stomach twisted, but Ethan's face lit up with cautious hope. "Maybe she's changed," he said, his voice soft. I wanted to believe it, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. We invited her to dinner. A test. She arrived looking humbled. Her usual grandeur softened. "Clara," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "I was cruel. I saw you as a threat, not a daughter. I want to try again." Her words were perfect, but I'd heard her apologies before. Ethan, though, was hopeful, his hand squeezing mine under the table. I nodded, wary but willing to give her a chance for him. Over the next few weeks, Margaret was a model guest. She volunteered at the community center, charmed the kids, even helped with dishes. Ethan was thrilled, believing we could be a family. I wanted to believe it too, but her eyes still held that calculating glint. One night, as I locked up the center, I found a note taped to the door. "You'll never be enough." No signature, but I knew her handwriting. I confronted her the next morning, the note in my hand. "Margaret, stop this," I said, my voice low. She feigned shock, but her lips twitched, betraying her. "Clara, I don't know what you mean," she said. I stepped closer, my anger cold and sharp. "I've given you a chance. But if you hurt Ethan, if you try to tear us apart again, you're gone. For good." She didn't flinch, but her mask slipped, revealing the woman who'd never accept me. "You'll always be the girl from the laundromat," she said, her voice venomous. "Ethan deserves better." I smiled, not with warmth, but with resolve. "Ethan chose me, and I'm done proving myself to you." That night, I told Ethan everything. He listened, his face a mix of grief and resolve. "She's my mother," he said, "but you're my home. I'm done letting her hurt you." He confronted her the next day, his voice steady but firm. "Mom, you need to leave. We can't do this anymore." Margaret's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She packed her bags and left, her silence louder than any fight. The house felt empty without her, but it was a clean emptiness, a chance to start fresh. Ethan and I grew closer, our love a quiet strength. The community center became our legacy, a testament to what we'd built together. I never heard from Margaret again, but I didn't need to. I'd won not just the house, but the life I'd fought for. Years later, as Ethan and I stood in the center's courtyard, watching kids play under the mural we'd painted, he took my hand. "You're enough, Clara," he said. "You always were." I smiled, my heart full. I'd come from nothing, built everything, and found love in the process. Margaret had tried to break me, but she'd only made me stronger. This was my home, my family, my victory, and no one could take that away.